And I said, hey, can I borrow that book? And she was like, it's too expensive for you. Hi, I'm Sudean Peters, and this is my mental health story. So I lived in a household with 11 people, sometimes 12 or 13. My mother and my siblings and I, we all lived in one room growing up. We all shared a room, we all shared a bed for most of my life until I was well into my teenage years. There were things that made it hard, but I think especially my period made me realize how different my life was in relation to other people. It was a very shame-inducing experience, and I definitely remember having to make plans. So I would use like old panties and I would wrap them up at home, and if it was really bad I would wrap up tissue and the old panties and go to school, and I would change them. I would carry little bags so I could change them in the bathroom in private. And if you know anything about public school, there's hardly any toilet paper and soap and everything, so I had to be very, very creative when it came to my period. My family and I would talk about wasting pads. Like, you don't change your pad too often because it's not something that is cheap, it's not something that you have, so you can't waste. You have to make sure you wear it all day and then you change and stuff like that. So looking back, I don't think I really had an idea of what mental health was. But when I think about my life, especially in high school, it was so, I feel like I use the word isolating a lot because I think the friends that I had very, very different experiences from me. And I remember being in high school, and I can't even remember which book it was, and I had a friend and I said, hey, can I borrow that book? And she was like, it's too expensive for you. Growing up in the space that I grew up in, I always worried about my parents. Okay, I'm going to extra lessons, and every time I went to extra lessons, I would calculate how much money my mother owed the teacher, and the teacher never cared. She just knew that I was a bright kid and she wanted me to come, and I would bring my pan with baked beans and rice, and she would be so proud that I would come at the same time. But in the back of my head, nobody knew that I was calculating how much money my mother owed this lady. And so I was there and I was learning, but a big part of my experience was always worrying. That feeling of always worrying definitely carried from primary school to high school. I remember going to high school and I never paid my school fee, never, every single year. And every start of the school term, I would calculate, this is how much mommy owes, this is how much daddy owes, and I'm not going to graduate no matter how well I did. It would just be calculating life over and over and over and over. I have $2,500. How am I gonna make sure that there is food in the house to eat, that I can pack lunch for my little sister, that she has fare to go to school, and that I have fare to go to school, and then I'll figure out what I'm going to eat. I think it took me a while to get over the shame, but I had moments that affirmed my experiences. Yes, I experienced elitism and classism and I felt othered, but I also had teachers that lifted us up in a way that I honestly would not have been able to survive without. When I was diagnosed with PCOS, I was 11. I was in first one, so I was 11 or 12. And I remember feeling so bad because I was in the hospital for a couple of days because I had lost so much blood. I remember having to get an ultrasound, and it was the first time I ever got an ultrasound or any sort of advanced treatment in my head. And all I was thinking about is, how are my parents affording this? I felt like my body was failing me and my body was failing my family, because I just knew that all of these things that we had to do to figure out what was going on with me, there were things that we could not afford. I don't think the guilt that you face when you grow up the way that I did ever really goes away. I feel a lot of responsibility to my family. I feel a lot of responsibility to my community. I feel a lot of anxiety all the time, of course, because it's very, very easy. We know how life is to move back to that kind of space and situation. But I would definitely not say that it's without anxiety and without guilt. And as somebody who really struggles with anxiety and depression, not being able to feel like I can pause and let my shoulders drop and just be for a moment, or let myself fall apart if something's happening in my life that would require anybody to fall apart, or it would be okay if somebody falls apart. I can't give myself that luxury because I understand that the stakes are high. And I understand that I feel a lot of fear of moving back to that space. I realized that my life is privileged and charmed and different from what it looked like, and that is not without guilt, because I know it's really not like that for a lot of people within my community and where I grew up. And so I carry that in a way that makes me not feel good all the time. I think it has taken a lot of therapy to recognize that guilt and shame that I feel, even with enjoyment. When you're in survival mode for all of your life, it takes a lot to realize that survival mode is not the only mode. And so even as I'm talking about it, I can actually feel myself rejecting this idea of not always being in survival mode, because what else is life for other than to work hard and to take care of your family? With therapy and with also being around people who affirm the fact that, hey, that was your experience and that was really, really hard, but you've done your best with the help of other people, with the help of your sister, with the help of your support system to get to this place. And I think that you deserve to sit and breathe and enjoy it a little bit and to be happy. I've really been trying to learn that and to settle with that. The only thing that I would say to somebody who is growing up in a situation that I was raised in is to ask for help to the best of your abilities, because we can't do it by ourselves. I'm Sudean Peters, and that was my mental health story.